Hello, welcome to RevelatorAlf. I hope you're all well. So, if you want to buy a new motorcycle, are you taking a risk? Well, inherently you would say, well, yeah, you are taking a risk because you don't really know what you're buying, right? But you can be safe that if you go and buy from a big brand, Triumph, Harley-Davidson, Honda, whatever, the big brands, that you're going to get top quality bike, right? And it's all going to be there for you, and you're not really going to have any problems with it. Well, we know that's not true, or not entirely true. Machines are machines. They can always let you down. You get a bike from some big brands, you pay a lot of money for them, and they just let you down. They break down, and you get parts, and you have to wait for parts, all this sort of stuff. I made a video last about going to Motorcycle Live and the stark reality of companies like MotoGP bringing in all these imported bikes, let's say from China, but not only Chinese brands. There's Indian brands, Royal Enfield, Hero, etc. But the likes of Zontas, Vogue, Benelli, QJ Motor, the list goes on and on and on, right? Of all these brands. They're bringing them in, the stark reality that they're coming in with really great bikes at really great value, and the quality has just got better and better and better. So much so now that I believe it's gonna make you question any brand loyalty that you have with the other bigger brands, let's say. I got some interesting comments on that video, and also in some shorts that I made in and around it. And I got some emails as well on the back of that as well. So interesting. But one of the kind of comments that you get on a repeated basis from a lot of people when you're talking about these emerging brands, let's say from China, or well-established brands from India, but are not really well known in the Western markets. People would always talk about, well, the quality is not good, or the resale value is terrible, or you don't know what you're buying, and all that kind of negativity that you could attribute to those kinds of motorcycles comes out in the comments, right? But here's the thing. When you buy these motorcycles from emerging markets, especially when they've got a track record now of 10, 15 years of bringing over motorcycles, what you're actually talking about here is that companies that have been working with Western manufacturers for a number of years in terms of engine development, engine manufacturers, manufacturing many of the parts. So lots of the motorcycles that you already ride and own from the established brands in the West, most of their parts are coming from China anyway, or being made in India anyway. So to think that just because these manufacturers from those countries are producing their own bikes and they're not going to be top quality or the same quality or similar quality to Western brands, I think is a bit of a false message here. So they've learned a hell of a lot in the last sort of 10, 15 years from producing motorcycles, and motorcycles that meet the expectations of Western customers especially. The other aspect to this is let's just say you want to go to a Triumph or a Honda, and they're launching a brand new motorcycle. And you think, oh, I like the look of that. And you test ride it, you think, oh yeah, I really like the look of it. You like the price, you put your money down, and you get your bike. That bike has no track record because it's a brand new motorcycle. In fact, any new motorcycle to you has no track record. You don't know for sure whether that bike is going to be any good, if it's going to be reliable, so on and so forth. So exactly the same applies now when you're buying a bike from an emerging manufacturer. Vogue, Benelli. I call these emerging manufacturers because their reincarnation is relatively new to the UK and European markets, and potentially to the United States, for example. When you're buying these brands or bikes from these brands, you don't really know. There isn't a lot of data on them, especially with brand new models that they might bring out. But it's exactly the same as if you're buying a new model from a well-known brand. So in terms of having data, empirical data, as one chap commented on one of the videos, there is no real data there. But it's exactly the same from whenever you're buying a motorcycle from. But the quality is no doubt there. Now, nobody knows for sure how much value these motorcycles are going to lose. Well, you could say that about any brand. You don't really know. Market forces can change within the next year or two, and the motorcycle that you had now suddenly lose a lot of value. I'll give you an example. A few years ago, I owned a Triumph. It was a Triumph Explorer. Great bike. I was doing all sorts of mileage on it, all sorts of trails and off-road riding. And the very next year, they brought out the Tiger 1200, the very first incarnation of the Tiger 1200. The value of my Explorer just dramatically dropped. So much so that to get any trade-in values in the next couple of years, it would hardly be worth anything. So I took the leap to sell the bike, trade in for this Harley Davidson, which I got now, because I was going to lose too much value in the next year. And that's purely because Triumph replaced the model. So that's from a well-established brand. So it's a great bike, but it could lose its value very quickly. Anything can lose its value very quickly. If you're buying a motorcycle for, £7,000, £8,000, £9,000, and it's got all the spec and it's got everything there, it's great. Yes, it's going to lose money the next couple of years. But I dare say that any other motorcycle that you've got is going to lose the same amount of money. In fact, it'll probably lose even more. The only difference is that you're spending more in the first place. So the amount of depreciation might be comparable. It might be a little bit more on one of these bikes. You just don't know. But the thing is, they're coming in with similar kind of warranties. They're coming in with similar kind of accessory packages. So it really depends what your view on this is. Is it worth a punt to spend 7,000 or 8,000 on a 700, 800, 900 cc motorcycle that comes from China, that comes from India, but all the spec is there? They look good. The performance write-ups seem to be great. The warranty is there. The backup is there. It all seems to be there. Or are you still only going to want to entertain a really expensive motorcycle from one of the well-established brands? Now, in all fairness, not all of the well-established brands in the West here, they do sell cheaper motorcycles as well. And this is where I've said in the past that it's good to see some of these well-established brands, they have responded in reducing their prices or keeping their prices in check. One of the big questions was, in the last few years, yes, that they might be cheaper motorcycles, but the quality just isn't there. And what I've been saying this year, and certainly for the last couple of years, that quality is getting better and better. And this year, it does appear that the quality is on par or very close to it. So when people say, oh, do you know what, you just can't trust these brands, but then you also have to factor in that many, many people are buying these motorcycles. And many people are very happy with them. And they're waxing lyrical about how good they are, what the great value is. Go check my videos. See the last video I made about Motorcycle Live, about the motorcycle industry being saved by these kinds of bikes. Check in the comments with some of them, and maybe one or two, where people have said, look, I've sold my Honda, I've sold my Suzuki, I've sold whatever it is, and I've bought one of these bikes. I've traded in that, and I've bought a Royal Enfield, I've bought a BSA, I've bought a Zontas, I've bought a Vogue, and they're great. And they're having no problems with them. So I just don't buy that just because they come from China, they come from India, that they're going to be poor quality. Now, you could label that a few years ago, where you could say when they first started emerging, especially the Chinese ones, you could say these are pretty shocking, right? But actually, they were so cheap that people were buying them, and they were just riding them for a couple of years, and they went on the scrap heap, right? I don't necessarily like that, but it is what it is. But now, these are not the same bikes. These are not the same manufacturers. But I think we, as motorcycle riders and the motorcycle buying public, may have been very slow to switch our thinking on this. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. All I can say is that I'm very interested in at least trying them out, at least seeing what they're like. I always pay particular attention to people who own these bikes. What do they say? And if they're telling me it's good value and they're all right, and guess what? I've just saved myself £10,000, dollars, shekels for buying this bike as opposed to buying that bike, and I pretty much get exactly the same, then you can't really argue with that. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like what I do here, keep on watching, and I'll catch you again. Bye now.